It's taken a while to get together, in part because this turned out to be a really tricky thing to do. We're going to be saying some things. We know that there are some others who have set out to say some things as well, and if you find yourself moved by the urge to come up and speak also, let us know and we'll make room for it. We expect to be free flow of emotions. I'm pretty sure only one of these is alcohol. But I know I'll be referring to it frequently during our speaking bit. I expect the I will be as well. If anyone out there, like I did say, you're being recorded. However, outbursts of appropriate emotion are appropriate. So absolutely feel free, because there's no way we can stop us, let alone you.
We can't hear you very well.
Oh no, it's probably because I'm standing a little too far away from this thing.
Thank you.
How's that?
No,
louder.
you have to go closer.
Louder. Let me just go behind the screen here.
It doesn't even sound like it's on.
It lied to me. So in any event, I have started the ball rolling doing the duties of the eldest son, but I will happily admit that Gavin was closer to my dad in almost all respects, so I'm going to let him start the actual material.
All right. Couple things. I am going to take my glasses off and probably not look up too much to try and stop from crying, but it's not going to work. And I've got Dutch courage, so hopefully all this will help. Thank you. Whew. All right. The last words that I said to our dad were a dream of the Churchill. During his first few days of the hospital, he was having some bad dreams. So I got into the habit of saying good dreams only when I'd leave his room after I'd leave a visit. At lunch the day before he passed, he was given the diagnosis of terminal cancer, and was told he had a few weeks to a few months, to which he replied, "Well, that's a pisser." I had confirmed with him that night that it was still his wish to have his ashes be sprinkled in the Churchill River. So Churchill was on our minds. He loved the North, so I thought, what better thing to dream of. Many of my fondest memories of our dad were from our time up north. It took a while to really appreciate it, though. Some of our first trips up there with the scouts could feel like a trial. The bugs, the portages, the grind of it. I was a delicate boy, prone to homesickness at the best of times. And this didn't feel like the best times, but I grew to love it. I trauma bonded with the other kids. I started to really appreciate the beauty of the Canadian Shield, and through it all, I was in awe of and I've lost my place. I found my courage and then I lost my place. And through it all, I was in awe of how my dad seemed to know exactly what he was doing and where he was going. He had come from a different continent, across an ocean, but he was completely in his element in a canoe on a Saskatchewan lake. This went a lot easier when I was doing it by myself in my room. Not all of our trips to the north were contests of man versus nature. We'd also travel up there together, our family with Dad's business partner's family, the Taylors. We traveled by motorboat rather than canoe, which was so luxurious. And we'd stay in their cabin on Lac La Ronge, a cabin that our dad had helped to build. It was there that I got to spend some simpler time with our dad, and where he taught me to play crib, something that would become our game from then on. Later, When scouting was in our past, he and I would still travel in the north together. We wouldn't do arduous treks trying to get from point A to point B. We'd just load up with a cedar strip canoe that he had built with his own 2 hands, and we'd load it up with whiskey and beer and some food. We'd find a place to hunker down and we'd just enjoy camping. And we played a lot of crib. Not to say that these trips were without adventure. There was the time that we decided to have a couple of beers at the zoo in La Ronge, if you know, you know, before we got in the water. Canoeing on Lake La Ronge after dark is a very dumb thing to do at the best of times, but with a canoe that was loaded down with beer, and we were also loaded down with beer, it was really dumb, but we survived. Just like we survived insane whitecaps in the open water despite my bad paddling form, bringing liters of lake water into the canoe. Just like we survived being trapped in that point for an extended stay due to nasty weather. Just like we survived being nearly shot by a friend of his, whose cabin we paddled up to unannounced well after dark. But mostly it was relaxing times for a father and a son on an island, sharing drinks and playing cards.
Our dad came to Canada in 1954 with his older brother Jan. He'd come from a large family, one of 8 siblings, or one of 9 children. He had 8 siblings. Math is tricky. They and the parents had lived through the Second World War in Hinnikin in the Netherlands. Dad did not really want to talk about his childhood because it was also the war. He did drop a few absolutely hair-raising clues around stories that were more innocently about his childhood, but it was enough to let us know that it was a very hard time.
I do believe that the struggle to stay fed and to be noticed in a large family during wartime shaped his love of food and drink and his boisterous ability to be seen and heard. That man could be heard.
In Canada, he followed his father's footsteps, pursuing a career in architecture. Started his studies in Toronto, but finished in Winnipeg. And it was at the University of Manitoba that he met a beautiful young interior design student named Sharon Downey. They began a romance that spanned over 6.5 decades.
In preparing for the slideshow for this event, I found a bunch of pictures where my dad, where my dad is just gazing at my mom with his bald face, puppy love. Sorry about that one. After graduation, they moved to Prince Albert and welcomed their first addition to the family, my big brother Dirk. Shortly after Dirk arrived, they set up shop here in Regina. They had another son, Michael, who tragically passed away when he was only 8 weeks old. And a couple of years later, I showed up.
Our dad set a very high bar for a son that looked up to him. Notice there are some of the scouts that he was a leader to present today, and that's grand. We are very pleased to see all of his past represented here. But he was not just a leader of a group of scouts. He was a leader in his community and in his field in architecture. He was a life member of Construction Specifications Canada, a life member and president of the Saskatchewan Association of Architects. He served as a fellow of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. I do not want to leave the royal off that, because otherwise, why do we have a constitutional monarchy? He served as president of the Regina Chamber of Commerce, director of the Saskatchewan Chamber of Commerce, the Regina Visitors and Convention Bureau of Agribition, and the Regina Business Improvement District, and as a board member of the Regina Wheatland Theatre. Many of these things all at the same time. He was a recipient of the Saskatchewan Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Diamond and Platinum Jubilee medals. And I think one of the biggest honors of his life was when he became a member of the Order of Canada in 1995. To be recognized not only by his doctorate home, not only for his professional excellence, but for his good works, including to help organize the first Boy Scout and Girl Guide food bank drive in Saskatchewan, meant a great deal to him. He was also, as a member of the Order of Canada, he was able to act as a presiding official at citizenship ceremonies. He did this several times and entertained plans to do so again once his health permitted. He loved welcoming people to this country where he had been able to accomplish so much. He had a deep understanding of the potential in all people. Also, honorary consul for the Netherlands in Saskatchewan. As a consul, he held several receptions in this very room, which he designed. He designed the entire Mackenzie Gallery, and if you have a moment and feel moved to do so once things become a little less formal here, please wander out and look upon the art in its carefully designed settings. Some of his other works are the Moose Jaw Art Gallery and Library, the Neil Baldwell Art Center, which he a few months ago declared was the favorite thing he ever did. Victorian Union Hospital in Prince Albert, the Plains Health Center, which is now the Regina Sask Polytechnic campus, Trianon Tower downtown here, and Roberts Plaza, which is just up the road that way, which he called home for most of his retirement.
When he first came to Canada, my dad worked as a surveyor in Lethbridge and Wood Buffalo National Park to earn money for school. He told me that it was grueling work, but I believe that this work cemented two things in him: his love of nature and his serious work ethic. The man put in ridiculous hours, like just ridiculous hours. But a lot of you would know that he could play as hard as he worked. He told me stories of being mistaken for Fidel Castro at the Playboy Club in Chicago and just rolling with it. There was a story of waking up outside after a night of debauchery in Carnival in Breda with a soggy loaf of bread for a pillow, and his theories about how the loaf came to be soggy. He suspected dog pee. To see him holding court was magical, but he relished life in smaller ways. From making wine with his best friend Malcolm. Sorry. To sitting on Blockma on the porch of his office to just watching birds in the yard. The man left an indelible mark on the landscape around him and on the people that knew him. It would feel nearly impossible to go anywhere with him without running into people that would want to stop and have a chat with him. He also had a real impish streak. He loved to playfully antagonize and play the curmudgeon. Some of our childhood friends were terrified of him. If you worked at the Bushwhacker, you either dreaded or loved being assigned to his table at our weekly Friday lunches. He turned his sense of humor on me occasionally. I remember a trip that he and I took to the sand dunes with a couple of my friends. He got into the port and he gave me the gears fairly relentlessly that night. Karma got him though. The sleeping bag that he brought was virtually useless, and he shivered and chattered through the night as his port buzz turned into a hangover. And in the morning, he dragged that bag to the fire, and he just burned it. And there's actually photographic evidence on the table back there. There's like a picture in a sort of metal frame of him sitting hungover, obviously, with a sleeping bag on fire in front of him.
A lot of us did not think this would happen. He survived so many things that it did not seem unreasonable to expect him to live forever. Survived Hitler, prostate cancer, heart attack, and perhaps most impressively, being trapped in a canoe with one or both of his sons. After retirement, he fractured his back. A few years later, he broke both his legs at the same time. And he just kept going, generally with a smile on his face. Amongst the pictures that are cycling through over there is I expect, a picture of my son shoving him in a wheelchair between Roberts Plaza and the Wascana Rehab. And yeah, just happy times apparently.
Yeah, just. But death is still undefeated, and I just want to take a second to offer some advice. If you have something to say or an opportunity to spend time with a loved one, now is the time. I say this not from a place of regret, but of relief that I did so. I have a few quick examples. Mom and Dad were living at Queen Victoria Estates after they had to move out of Roberts Plaza. That helps. They were living in Queen Victoria Estates after they had to move out of Roberts Plaza. Every Friday, Queen Victoria Estates held a happy hour, which was free drinks and food, which is obviously catnip for my dad. I had to run an errand out to them on a Friday afternoon. I can't remember what I was doing. But after, on my way out, I accompanied my dad down from their suite to the room where they held happy hour. He asked if I wanted to come in for a drink, and I told him I probably shouldn't because I had to go to work. He looked disappointed, but he understood. But I thought, screw it, and we went in for a drink. It was one of the last times I got to see our dad. One of the last times I got to see our dad holding court, and I'm so glad that I took the time. Second instance was the day that he received his terminal diagnosis. Despite being told we had weeks to months left with him, I made sure to tell him right then how much I loved him and looked up to him. And then I felt that I won the lottery having him and Mom as my parents. Finally, on our last evening, his last evening with us, before I suggested that he dream of the Churchill, my son and I were visiting him. I wanted the two of them to play their first game of cricket together, and they did. I gave up my last chance to play cricket with my dad so that you could, and I'm so glad I did. It meant the world to me, so you guys play. I have a picture from that night that's not in here because I don't know, I feel it's a little private, but the smile on his face was huge. Just lit the room.
It's actually gin, folks. Yeah, and it's impossible to sum up the life of Willem de Lint. Something we've left out of our prepared but stated here is, he received his diagnosis of, weeks, possibly months. And I think it's very in keeping with his character that, he said, in essence, you can't tell me what to do. And like hours. That, like, what, 12 hours maybe?
Yeah, maybe 18, yeah.
So, he did his thing. And I think that's about as far as I'm going to get.
In his long life, he had impacts on the world around him that we could never articulate, but to us, he was our friend, our role model, and our hero. He was our dad. Sorry. Okay. All right, that's our crying in front of you portion of the evening done.
I'm going to take a moment because I'm watching on the screen that is obstructing some of your view of me crying, and seeing that the live element of it on Facebook is acting like a complete bag of garbage. So I'm going to take a moment to reassure people that are watching this from a distance that there will be a recording posted later. And so while I'm doing that, perhaps you can lay out what's coming up next.
Sure. Yeah. So once Dirk gets that fixed up, Kathy Wake will be, or Clank, sorry, I'm still used to. Will be saying some words about my dad, and then we'll open the mic to anybody else that might want to say some words, and then Tara will be reading some words from one of my dad's nieces, my cousin Micah, and then I'm going to offend most of the people in this room with a cartoon that my dad and I made, and then after that we will, just want everybody to have a good time tonight and this afternoon, have some drinks and remember them. So.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I have heard it said that the best thing a child can do for their future success is to choose their parents wisely. The second best thing is for their parents to have great friends. Friends who make a difference in the lives of their children. Willem de Lint was one of those friends. My name is Catherine, or some of you know me as Kathy. And I'm here today not just as someone who knew me as Willem, but as the daughter of his friend, Malcolm Wake. Willem was my dad's best friend. To me, Willem, affectionately known to our extended family as Mr. D, wasn't just a family friend. He was a fixture in our lives. A presence so constant, so full of life and mischief, that it's hard to imagine a world without him in it now. I can still see him bombing down my childhood street in the station wagon, scout van, BMW, Mercedes, the current car of the time. Mr. D and my dad met when Mr. D was president of the Regina Chamber of Commerce. He approached my dad about getting involved with Tourism Regina. That one conversation sparked a friendship that would last for more than 4 decades. It also nudged my dad into community life in a way that he might not have explored otherwise. That was Mr. D's gift. He had a way of putting people into the current of life. Their friendship was full of adventure. Mr. D took my dad out onto Wascana Lake to teach him how to canoe. I can see that moment. 2 men in a canoe, one teaching and one probably thinking, what are we doing here? It was during that outing that Mr. D grabbed his camera. My dad asked him what he was doing, and Mr. D replied that he was taking a photo of Roberts Plaza, a building that he had designed and was proud of. And fittingly, both he and my dad and their spouses eventually became residents of that building. At one point, they were both leading youth groups, my dad with a Cub Pack and Mr. D with a Scout Troop. Naturally, they decided to combine forces, creating a kind of super pack of kids and chaos. And there were camping trips, downhill ski trips, firewood sales, cow manure sales, yes. Canoeing expeditions on the Churchill River, and the occasional medical emergency. Like the time a kid stuck an axe in his leg, Mr. D, ever resourceful, was ready to stitch him up with fishing line and a splash of alcohol. Thankfully, a local fellow was boating by and offered to take the boy back to Stanley Mission. When Mr. D tried to offer him money, the man simply said, "I don't need your money. I have all of this," and he gestured around the land around him. And that moment stuck with Mr. D. He loved it up there, and I'm sure it stuck with everyone. And then there was a time they took the Scout Troop camping on the shores of Lake Diefenbaker. Mr. D insisted that he and my dad sleep under the stars. No tent, why would you need a tent? Just open sky. It was all fine until the morning came and they woke up to a coyote chewing on Mr. D's sleeping bag. Can you imagine? Most people would have packed up and gone home, but not Mr. D. He probably swore, made a joke, brushed it off, poured himself a coffee, or we all know maybe something stronger. That was just Mr. D. Unflappable, adventurous, and always up for a story worth telling. Mr. D was not afraid of tough conversations either. He gave the talk to the boys, yes, that talk. When my friend Lisa and I joined the Scout group, he treated us with respect and the same expectations as the boys. He believed in our strength, our capability, and made sure we were included in everything. He even ensured Lisa and I attended the Canadian Scout Jamboree in Guelph, Ontario as ambassadors for Saskatchewan, as we were kind of a novelty being girl Boy Scouts. There were quiet moments too, most involving a cold beverage. In the den or on the deck of our house, Friday afternoons on the porch at his office, Saturdays, sometimes Sundays as well, on the deck at the lake, and the weekly lunches at Bushwhackers. They were rarely missed. These rituals became the rhythm of their friendship. And then there were projects. Oh, the projects. When my dad was thinking of renovating our family home, Mr. D told him, just sell it. 2 weeks later, he probably bombed again down our street again in one of those vehicles, showed up with architectural plans and said, let's get at it. A few weeks into the project, probably seeing the look on my mom's face and frustrated by the lack of my dad's progress, Mr. D pulled out a couple of the windows himself and then promptly left, clearly not realizing a storm was coming, and my dad had to scramble to get the windows back in. That was Mr. D, part architect, part instigator, always unforgettable. He also helped design and build the addition on my parents' beloved cottage at Lumsden Beach. I remember hearing of all the fun they had working together on that project, equal parts construction and camaraderie. When my brothers got married, of course Mr. D was on that invite list. When Todd and I got married, we opted for a small wedding, inviting only our immediate family, as my husband comes from way too big of a family. Mr. D didn't worry about the invite. He showed up anyways. Because that is who he was. He always showed up, especially for us kids. When my brother Peter and his wife Michelle and my husband Todd and I had our kids, Mr. D got to know them as well and had such a positive influence on their lives. They knew Mr. D as Granddad's BFF and his sidekick. So kind of like the two guys in the balcony on the Muppets, if you guys remember. Yeah. So early March, a few of us shared a moment we didn't realize would be our last, that I'll cherish for a long time. Mr. D and his sons, my dad, my daughter, and her boyfriend, and Todd and I gathered for a lunch at Bushwhackers. For Mr. D and my dad, it was a full circle moment. It was a full circle moment in a friendship that never really had a beginning or an end. It just was. I have a beautiful short video clip of them on my phone that day, just chatting, and I think it was about Belgian beer. My brother Peter and his family 2 weeks later also got to share one last bushwhacker luncheon together with Mr. D and his boys, and I'm sure they're grateful as well. My dad cherished his friendship so much that when approached by Mr. Taylor and Mr. Beckett, we believe, to contribute with the nomination for Mr. D for the Order of Canada, he jumped at it. That nomination reflected the deep respect and admiration they held for Mr. D, not just for his accomplishments, but for the kind of person he was. Mr. D was many things: an architect, a community leader, a husband, a father, a grandfather. But to us, he was also a scout leader, canoe partner, winemaking, beer, and oh my God, swish experimenter, a porridge philosopher, and a lifelong friend. He leaves behind buildings, yes. But more important, he leaves behind stories, laughter, lessons, and a legacy of friendship that shaped not just my father's life, but my brothers and our families. May we all be lucky enough to have a Mr. D in our lives, and wise enough to recognize it when we do. Thank you, Mr. D, for everything. Love you, buddy.
Don't know me, my name is Frank, the younger brother. Just for clarification, my mother had 9 children. Bill was the 33 version, and I'm the 35. Blessed for all of us, we were all different, and in a little while you'll understand what happens as a result. Bill and I go back, obviously, many years, and Gavin and Derek mentioned the fact that he establishes relationships and friendships, and also was a leader in many respects. During the war, that's exactly what was happening. The 3 of us, my younger brother, in other words, the 37 version, and the 35 and the 33, would be traveling around and working around, looking around for things to do, as those kids in the 6, 7, 8 years of age are likely to want to do. But also, one of the things that I recall specifically was the time that we were sitting, just hanging around along the side of the road, enjoying the sunshine, midday, and we saw this farmer way back in a field. And between us and the farmer, there was this wonderful field of carrots. Carrots that were just starting to ripen. We talked about it, and as you can imagine, during the war, hunger and food was always uppermost in your minds. So Bill said, okay. So he went into the field to see if we could get some fresh carrots. When Al, the younger one, and I left, the last we saw of William was with the farmer. The farmer was walking. Bill was on his knees being led to the farmhouse from where he was sent home. I don't know it. We never got any carrots, by the way. Another little thing that happened just after the war. Obviously, the war left us short of many things. Those of you that have gone through the Second World War will remember that, even here in Canada. But in Holland, of course, a bit worse than that. So after the war ended, there was something called the black market. And the black market was something that divided Holland and Belgium to a significant extent. In Holland, you were not allowed to be participating in the black market. It was illegal. But in Belgium, many things were available that were not available to us. Fortunately, our hometown is only about 30 kilometers away from an enclave of Belgium south of our hometown. 30 kilometers is 1 hour by bike. So the three of us would set up and set out for that, and because my sisters had, by that time, nylons were an invention and had come to Europe. So nylons, sweets, many other things were available there that we could not get in Holland. So we would bike down, we would come back up. Of course, there was always a customs office on the way back into Holland. But fortunately, the customs office was on the left-hand side of the road, and the three of us would be biking up on the right-hand side, with my youngest brother closest to the edge of the road, myself in the middle, and Big Bill on the left. Of course, as far as the customs agent was concerned, he would go to the eldest of the group, examine what he was carrying, which was zip, nothing, and he would look at me and say, oh well, and then totally forget about my brother. But you can imagine who was the real carrier of all the good stuff. So that's just a couple of things about my dear brother. Bill moved, I know it said 54, but in fact he actually moved to Canada in 53 as far as I remember. And he went to, he and his older brother Jan, seen him in some of the pictures, went to, they were sponsored, and they worked in Chatham for a season at a Libby's pickling plant. I think that pickling plant experience probably had a lot to do with his desire to become an architect and get away from pickling stuff. So he did other things and came back to Toronto and went to university, of course. I had not quite arrived yet at that time, but Bill and Jan had had this early experience with Canada and pickling. So I got a letter from my dear brother suggesting that I should give up all notion of moving to Canada. After all, the streets are not paved in gold. It's tough. You know, don't bother coming. Of course, being a de Lint, you know what happened to that advice. It didn't go very far. So here we are. Just to fill in some blanks, I know that most of you, all of you, have probably known Bill for the past 60-odd years, right here in Saskatchewan, and what has really become his hometown. And just as an aside, I think it's a wonderful tribute to Bill and Willem that we are able to have this gathering in the museum that he designed. I think it's a wonderful tribute and a great remembrance for him. My first exposure was to when we drove out here from Toronto for the wedding. That took place, I believe it was a Cinnabon Club is where the reception was. And we arrived and it was about 90 degrees. We went to wash the car at Coppell and then drove into Regina and booked into the local motel and had a wonderful bachelor's party, beer in the bathtub, the thing. And then in the morning, we learned that we saw that there was a great swimming pool just a little away from the building, but close enough for us to go and enjoy a refreshing dip, which we did do that, very fine, until we sort of came to our senses and looked out and realized it was snowing. That whole day, I don't know how Sharon and Bill managed, but that whole day the temperature rather only went above 40 degrees by about 2 or something, so it must have been a freezing experience for the two of them. That was my first introduction to, now Bill, of course, never left the place, and there's many great memories that have already been related about that. There's some that came to mind when I was looking at that wonderful display. Some photographs that all of a sudden sort of hit me. Bill and his relationship with the Dutch royal family actually go back before the day that he became an honorary consul. He was in Toronto for, I believe it was an estimators meeting. He was there on a regular basis. And so we met and had dinner and so on. And so he told us, he said, yeah, I met Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands last night at the Royal at the Plaza Hotel, where he was staying as well. And he said he saw this crowd of people, and in the middle of that crowd was a person who obviously was of some importance. And then Bill says, I think I know that man. But he could not remember the proper way of addressing someone from the royal family. So instead of saying, Your Royal Highness, he said, Hey, Prince. And the two of them hit it off and repaired to what was called the Blue Room upstairs, and I think they came down at about 3 o'clock in the morning. So that was his first connection with the Dutch royal family. Then later on, of course, he was given the honor of being the honorary consul, and he had, at some point, all of the consuls had to go to Holland to be introduced to the Queen Beatrix at the time. And Bill apparently was the last one to have that honor. And if you see the photo over there, you see that there's there's Bill, or Willem, and Queen Beatrix, and they're sort of standing. But Bill had already shaken hands with her, and he said, you must be happy that this is the last hand you have to shake today. And so the Queen sort of smiled, laughed, and they had a good chat together. So there was his second connection to the royal family. So he's done very well in being part of that. And of course, the rest is history. Let me see. I thought I had made a note of something. Hang on a moment. It says here, if you're finished, shut up. I will do that. Thank you for the time. And thank you also, obviously, on behalf of the Eastern family for being here and remembering my dear brother. Thank you.
She called us Memories of Willem. My dear, authentic, kind, generous-spirited, creative, and life-adventuring Uncle Willem has left an indelible mark on my life. I have so many memories, some not as sharply outlined as others, which cumulatively serve as an imprint of the man as I came to know him. Here are a few. In the 60s, when I was a young teenager, Willem arrived with Sharon in Holland with a backpack containing a frozen turkey and a huge porterhouse steak. How on earth he got that through customs is an immense guess. I thought it made him and them both brave and daring.
When, as a 19-year-old, I immigrated to Canada in January 1970, Willem, Sharon, and little Dirk and I all traveled on the same flight, making the departure from my Holland family so much easier. They were traveling home after a visit to Holland. I transferred to a Toronto-bound flight in Montreal, sad to see them leave for their Regina-bound flight. Willem visited Toronto later that summer for Robert's wedding. He invited me to join him at a very nice restaurant on Avenue Road, not something my very meager budget would then ever allow me. Not long after my stay in hospital for a cardiac issue, I was so touched by his interest, caring, and generosity. Even though I do not remember any content of the conversation, I remember that it felt like home and left me feeling encouraged. When my first marriage ended, I went through a rough few months, feeling especially the weight of responsibility of navigating my 2-year-old child through this big change in her life. I'm not sure if by design, that is, my mother in Holland asking him to check on me while in Toronto, Willem showed up at my Toronto apartment. His being there felt, again, like a thread with home. He reported to my mother that it looked like I was managing fine, and hearing that helped me to believe that I was too. At some point, my mom shared something I had written with both Willem and Sharon, and they encouraged me to write more. I was so affirming and came at a point in my life where that mattered. Many years later, in Regina for a work-related event, I met Willem at his office. I found him sitting on the porch in front of the giant Dutch royal emblem, courtesy of his role as honorary consul, sporting a yellow short-sleeved shirt, shorts, bare feet perched on the porch railing, and a bottle of Bols Genever planted next to him, a glass in hand. As we left, I managed to elicit a big groan from him when I unwittingly almost took off the door of his rather ancient car. Apparently, it required special handling. He then took me on a tour of the art gallery on our way to dinner with Sharon and Gavin, walking right through a formal event that was underway. To show me a gallery and some of his favorite art, we certainly stood out among all the people dressed in gala attire. In the early 2000s, I spent about 6 weeks traveling through Saskatchewan for a consulting project and discovered that when people asked me if I had any family in the province, Willem was known by quite a few, whether because of his engagement with Scouts, the food bank, as the Dutch consul, or for his architectural work. One person observed, "He is quite eccentric. Your uncle, right?" I replied that in my opinion, Uncle Willem was a life artist. When my mom was dying in 2018, Willem came to be with her in Holland for a bit. Not an easy undertaking for him, as his own health was less than stellar. Each day for a week, he would sit on the chair next to her in her living room with us, her grown children and grandchildren, often gathered around. He always brought treats to share: herring, raspberries, red berries, liverwurst, drop licorice. He managed to find gluten-free drop licorice, so as a celiac, I could enjoy it too. The whole family, including cousins Martin and Monique, enjoyed a lovely dinner at Willem's invitation in an Indonesian restaurant, while my brother Bass stayed with my mom. Watching Willem in his little rented car drive to the place from my safe perch in Martin's car was a memorable and hair-raising spectacle. In December 2020, having had a phone chat with Willem some weeks earlier, a box arrived at my house, full of typically Dutch December treats, just because. How kind and so generous. In another phone conversation, we reminisced about the Dutch foods we missed and discovered we shared a love for Dutch leverkaas, a kind of sliced liverwurst. I mentioned our Mennonite butcher actually made a facsimile, not mentioning, for that health reasons, I had long since given up eating it. I shipped a frozen batch of it to him. I probably had more fun orchestrating that package than he and Sharon may have had eating it. In our last conversation, I was saying to Willem how sorry I was not to have visited for so long and that I would love to see him and Sharon. He just said, "Do not worry about it. We can talk on the phone from time to time, and I can continue to enjoy the pictures of your art in your house on Instagram. You need to paint more," were among his last words to me. I loved my Uncle Willem, made easy by always having received the best of him. He and Sharon were, by my mother's repeated assertion, her best friends. Who knows what, if anything, comes after we die. Nonetheless, I loved the idea of him shooting the breeze with my mom somewhere. With love, Micah.
Ed and I didn't get a chance to collaborate on a lot of things, but we did make a short video that was, I mean, when you see it, clearly inspired by him. It's a lot of fart jokes, so I'm sorry in advance, but it's his voice, so we thought it'd be a good thing to play.
Kids, shh! Did you hear that? That was the call of the elusive northern barking spider. Oh, what luck.
A barking spider? I've never heard of one of those.
Well, it's time that changed. Get around, boys. The northern barking spider is a friendly little bug, about the size of a penny. A close examination reveals he shares some features with the common canine, or dog to you guys, including floppy ears, a waggy tail, a lovable disposition, and oh lord, a tendency to drool. The northern barking spider makes his home in the most astounding way. Being a distant relative of the canine, the barking spider has a natural desire to play fetch. However, since they're not domesticated like your average house dog, they have nobody with whom to play. Through decades of evolution, the barking spiders have developed a remarkable skill, the ability to play fetch with themselves. First, the spider squeezes out a web ball from its backside. Then he picks it up, throws it, and chases it, having a wonderful time. In its impatience to play, the spider forgets to shut his web hole and leaves a silken trail wherever he runs. Eventually, the barking spider tires of his game and relaxes for a moment. It is usually at this point that he notices the wagging of his own tail. Mistaking this for an enemy, the barking spider gives chase. He chases in an ever-widening circle until, ta-da! He's made himself a web he can call home.
Really?
Of course, really. Why must you always doubt me? Oh, there must be a female in the vicinity. When you've had as much experience with the northern barking spider as I have, you acquire the ability to differentiate barks. That yelp, from low to high, is the mating call. A short, forceful bark means he's hungry. When he feels threatened, he releases a low growl. If you look up into the sky, you'll notice it's a full moon. You see? Look up. See that? That's right, kids. They howl at the moon, just like wolves.
Oh, for crying out loud, give me a break.
Was that a barking spider too? No, Kevin. That was a stepped-on duck. Now it's time to get into your tents because I have no idea what might have or who might have stepped on it.